Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I'm Debashis Basu. On Friday, 20th September, the Finance Minister announced some dramatic cuts in corporate taxes, which will benefit big taxpayers like Asian Paints, Nestle, HDFC Bank, and so on and so forth. They will also benefit new companies, which will now pay a tax of just 17.01%. This announcement predictably electrified the stock markets. The Sensex shot up by 5.3% on Friday itself and another 2.8% on Monday, making this one of the largest two-day gains in recent history. The real impact has actually been deeply psychological. Human beings love to extrapolate. So everybody is now thinking that if this government could take such a sudden, bold and dramatic step, then a series of big bang reforms are just around the corner. They're child's play for Mr. Modi. Well, this day or this sort of thinking has long been coming. Since 2014, businessmen and investors have been waiting for the government to take steps to accelerate growth. They fervently believe that BJP-led government, led by Mr. Modi, knew exactly what to do, and like diehard fans of film stars or cricketers, they have shown abiding faith in Mr. Modi, who is still seen as a doer with the right intent and a very strong will. This belief was unshakable, even through the foolhardiness of the demonetization and the shoddy implementation of GST. There's two moves that actually has wrecked the economy. But even then, just before the union budget in July, the market hit an all-time high. And that's mainly because investors looked for a groundbreaking budget. After all, Mr. Modi had created history by winning a popular mandate for the second successive time, and nothing stopped him from unleashing so-called big bang reforms. The reality, unfortunately, has been completely different, and businessmen and investors were naturally a positive bunch. They refused to see it. Over the last few months, every economic indicator has been flashing red. Rising unemployment, poor export growth, punitive taxes, tax terrorism, imploding public sector. Today, MTNL and Hindustan Aeronautics and other companies are not able to pay salaries. We've come to that kind of situation, but there is not a murmur. You won't see it much in the newspapers. Collapse in the GDP growth figure to just 5%. 5%, mind you, is effectively 3.5% because the government has changed the method of calculating GDP, and therefore the figure is now overstated by 1 to at least 1.5%. Auto sales are at a 20-year low, no manufacturing growth and crisis in financial services and banking. Imagine, this is quite a handful, and there is no earthly reason to think that everything is hunky-dory. All this added to a very alarming situation, actually. And so even some of the die-hard fans of Mr. Modi could not ignore them. But just when all seemed lost, the government announced huge tax cuts and all, and the belief that Mr. Modi was the right man for the right job, and we are all going to get big bang reforms, they just came back. What could these reforms be? Well, economic success stories from around the world clearly tell us what actually works. There is enough of studies now about growth, right? A balanced, continuous, and equitable growth flows from higher productivity. I mean, you have to use your land, labor, and capital much more productively than what you're doing. And experience from around the world shows that such higher productivity primarily rests on two things. One, a true market economy. And true market economy, which should offer both incentives and competition to the economic agents, which is businesses. This leads automatically to low and steady prices that in turn boost investment and consumption, and therefore a virtuous cycle gets kicked in. But this does not happen in a vacuum. If you just make it, if you just open up the economy, you're likely to get high inflation and you're likely to get high irregular growth. So what is required parallelly, along with a true market economy, is a regulatory governance and a justice system that encourages the good guys and penalizes the bad guys. There is no other proven method of durable economic growth other than a combination of these two. Now, if we don't do both together, we know what happens. We have an example from the early 1990s, which when we liberalized, but we failed to fire up either of these two engines, and which is why we had corruption, we had bad loans, we had inflation, from which the economy took a decade to recover. The later regimes made it worse by adding large doses of crony capitalism, that was under the Congress regime. If the recent tax cuts flowed from a well articulated thinking, as I am talking about, and this is everybody in the world knows that this is what works, it would have been truly transformative. But unfortunately, in India, there is no such framework, or at least nobody knows whether what the framework is. For the engine of incentives and competition to fire, we need ease of entry and exit for all businesses, and we don't have it. Dozens of permissions, some mindless, are required to start a business. Running it involves large frictional costs, including bribes and extortion, and shutting them down is equally tough. Land acquisition remains a big thorny issue. And if you look at the other engine, the other part, which is very, very important, which is a fair governance, regulatory, and a justice system, that also is no better. Continuous failure of the central bank to supervise banks and finance companies, the bumbling of sectoral regulators like National Highway Authority of India and other infrastructure areas, and the extortive attitude of the revenue authorities. These are all inimical to market economy, leading to enormous waste of time and resources. In fact, what not many people know about is the government is the largest litigant. They are the ones who are blocking up tens of thousands of crores in different appellate tribunals and high courts and so on. Hidden from the public eye are the ills of a tendering system for government projects, which leads to terrible productivity, enormous corruption, and decrepit public services. And e-tendering, I'm told, has not changed this very much. Now, the tax cuts did not flow from this overall plan or overall thinking to change the system. They're very welcome, and India did need to reduce taxes, but they were actually a knee-jerk reaction. The fact is, various markers of the economy today are far worse than in 2013, late 2013, when a despondent India, tired of corruption, crony capitalism, and policy paralysis, pinned their hopes and faith in Mr. Modi. If the tax cuts were a part of an economic philosophy, they would have been at least part of the budget. But indeed, the impact of tax cuts and afterthought is so deep that it has turned the budget upside down, and there is no clarity on how it will boost demand through greater consumption. Fact is, and in the market, the business people and investors are not willing to see it as yet. The tax cuts were announced at the end of a series of 6 press conferences. 5 of them did not work. After every press conference, the market actually went down. It went up in expectation and went down when what the FM was announcing hardly made any material difference. It's the 6th and the last one, a series of 6 from late August onwards, after an insipid and a forgettable July budget, shows that this has been a panicky reaction. The tax cuts have been a panicky reaction to just a 5% GDP growth that the government is talking about. We can now only hope that the government has finally got it, and it will stay focused on improving the basics, which is the productivity, demand, and governance. If not, that the extrapolation that everybody is making in their minds that, if tax cuts could happen, guess how many more bold measures are we going to get? That, I'm afraid, is not going to be coming through. Thanks for watching.